Good morning, everybody. So I am down at Picture Day helping out down there. So you're watching this video. You're going to take notes. Make sure, and I wrote this on the board, but I wanted to make sure that you remembered you should be taking notes. Okay, so important, I'm writing it. Take notes. I will be checking the notes. And what does that mean? That means all examples. Okay. All problems. Okay. Everything's problems. Yeah, everything that basically you would take notes on. If I was writing it up at the board, you should be writing it in your notebooks. Okay. Yep. Don't make fun of me. This is what I do on my Friday nights. It is Friday night at 9:30. I know I'm pretty a hip guy. So let's get started here. All right. Oh, you know what I actually want to do? I want to let you check your answers for the worksheet. So pause the video here and get out your worksheet, and you can check your answers. So pause wherever you need to here. Just going to scroll through it. So pause where you need to. Okay. And if you needed to, again, this was the only side that was due, but you could have done this side too. So I just want to show the answers there just in case. Now keep this for tomorrow. Remember that we have a quiz tomorrow. Don't forget about that. Quiz tomorrow. It's just over adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing positive, negative numbers. So make sure that you keep this, and we'll go over it right before the quiz, and we'll take our quiz. All right. So again, just to reiterate, the quiz tomorrow is just over this stuff. You don't need. It's not over anything on this video right now. It is just over adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing positive, and negative numbers. Okay. This stuff that we're going to learn today is going to be on the next coming quiz. Okay, so let's get into it. So go ahead and start your notes here. This is section 1.6, order of operations. Now, order of operations is something that you probably have already learned. Probably learned it in middle school, maybe even before then. It's just the way that you use the operations. That's just how it sounds. It's the order of the operations that we know of. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, all of those things. It's just the order that we go in. Now, you've probably used, this PEMDAS before, PEMDAS, whatever you want to call it. Back in my day, we said, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally to remember it. Go ahead and write this down. So pause here where you need to. Write this down and make sure you put in there everything that these stand for. So our P stands for parentheses or grouping symbols. Now this, you've done parentheses. We're probably going to, the only new part about that is the grouping symbols. We'll just add in a couple new grouping symbols. Exponents. We'll work a lot with exponents this year. E standing for exponents. We'll work a lot with exponents. And we'll explain those in great depth, and you probably have already some base knowledge about that. Now, what people get caught up in here is the M and the D. Just because, normally I see you guys, you write it like this, PEMDAS, and people think because M comes before D that multiplication always comes before division, and that is not right. Yeah, that is not right. Frowny face right there. That is not right. Multiplication and division come on the same step. You just go from left to right. Same thing with addition and subtraction. You go from left to right. That's the part that trips a lot of people up. Just because we write this PEMDAS like that, a lot of people think, oh, I have to do multiplication before division. I have to do addition before subtraction, and that is just not true. Okay. So let's work on this. This is going to be important. I want to see each step. Remember when I talked about showing all work with the homework? This is that. I want to see every single step. I know I'm nitpicky, but it's just the way it is for right now. So let's think about our order of operations. First, parentheses or grouping symbols. I don't see any. Exponents. I don't see any. Okay, we got multiplication and division. So I do my multiplication first. 15 minus 6 plus 1. You bring everything down that you don't use. Okay, we just use the 6. Now we have our addition and subtraction. Again, you go from left to right. 15 minus 6. We have a 9. Bring down what we don't use. Plus 1, 10. There's my answer. Okay, 15 minus 2 times 3 plus 1 would equal 10. We do the 2 times 3 first. We do the 15 minus 6. And we add 1. 10 is my answer. Again, all examples should be written down in your notes. Okay, so parentheses, none. Exponents, right there. So let's bring everything down that's not an exponent. 12 minus, let's evaluate the 3 squared, 9 plus 10 divided by 2. Okay, now we'll start with our multiplication and division. I see division right here. So we have 12 minus 9 plus 5. Then we go from left to right with all of our addition and subtraction. I take 12 minus 9. I get 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. And 8 is my final answer. Okay. Again, it's a good idea to pause wherever you need to. Okay. So, first thing, parentheses. There are grouping symbols. I actually see 2 different types of grouping symbols. I see a bracket, those are called brackets, and then I see a parenthesis. So, I'm going to go from the inside out with my parenthesis here. Negative 20 divided by negative 2, and inside the parenthesis now, we get a 5. And now I keep going inside the parentheses. So I started here, and now I continue here. Negative 20 divided by negative 10. Negative 20 divided by negative 10 is positive 2. There's my answer. Okay. Just like we did before where I have variables and I'm going to ask you to plug in those variables, you're doing the same thing here. Now we're just going to work it out a little bit more. 10 minus, plug in the 3 times 6, and then use order of operations based on that. So we have a 3 times 6 with our multiplication. 10 minus 18. 10 minus 18 would be a negative 8. There's our answer. Okay. Let's keep it going. Try this one on your own. Why don't you pause here, try it on your own, and then press play when you think you've got the answer. Okay, so hopefully you've tried it by now. Let's plug in what we know. 4 squared, parenthesis, negative 2 plus 3. So that's where we plug in for x. Go with your parentheses first. 4 squared, negative 2 plus 3, positive 1. Now remember that this is multiplication on the outside. A lot of people think, oh, I see parentheses, I must multiply that first, which is just not true. I got to take the 4 squared first, 16, then multiplied by positive 1 to get 16. There's my answer. Do the same thing here. Actually, you know what? Don't do that just quite yet. I want to show you how to plug it in first, and then I'll let you pause and go ahead. 14 plus. Now, whenever you're plugging in a negative here, and it's extremely, extremely important when you see an exponent and you're plugging in an exponent. This is going to be a problem all year. I will repeat myself over and over and over and over again. When you plug a negative number into a variable that has an exponent on it, you must put it in parentheses. Okay? The parentheses are extremely important. Why? Because here's why. This is very different than that. Okay? Why? Well, think about what an exponent is. An exponent is repeated multiplication. This tells me this. Negative times a negative is a positive 4. This tells me, well, what's being squared? Just the 2. The negative is not included in the squared. Negative 2 times 2, which is negative 4. Check it in your calculators. Do one with parentheses and one not. you're going to see this is true. So you have to be using parentheses. Okay, this is no good. You don't want that. Okay, you want this. So let's plug it in. 14 plus, we got a negative 2 squared is a positive 4, divided by 4. Let's take the division. 14 plus 1 is 15. There's my answer. Let's keep it going here. Let's think about more grouping symbols. Another couple grouping symbols that we have that you got to pay attention to are the fraction bar. Okay, make sure you remember that the fraction bar is really like a grouping symbol where it says, okay, this line through the middle is kind of delineating the top to the bottom. You have to basically simplify the top, simplify the bottom, and in the very end, switch it to division. Because that's all a fraction bar is, right? It's just division. So let's take a look here. Yeah, obviously, the fraction bar is just division. 4 divided by 2 is 2, right? Just remember that. And remember that it is like a grouping symbol. Okay. Absolute value, another grouping symbol. Now remember that the absolute value, go ahead and write down this definition here. The absolute value is the distance away from 0. Okay, and distance can never be negative. Okay, distance can never be negative. Always positive. Okay, it's always positive. Positive stays positive, negative turns into positive. Okay, so what am I saying here? Well, think about this. Negative 4, the absolute value of negative 4, because think about it, the on a number line, if I'm looking at, here's my 0, here's at negative 4. Where is this point? How far away? What's the distance away from 0? Well, this is 4 units, right? So that's the actual absolute value. That's the distance away from 0. It's 4 units away from 0, just in the negative direction. Okay, so that's absolute value, just looking at value. So the absolute value 2 minus 5, think about that. The absolute value is 2 minus 5 is negative 3. Well, what is the absolute value of a negative? It's positive. So 3. Okay. Let's try some examples. So notice here this fraction bar is like the grouping symbols. So when I say my first step is parentheses, yeah, that's true, but parentheses represents a lot more than just parentheses. It represents fraction bars, absolute values, brackets, braces, all sorts of things. So let's start with the numerator. Let's reduce the numerator. I see some multiplication in the numerator right here. So 2 times negative 4 is negative 8 plus 22. Oh, that's a bad fraction bar. Now I can do the bottom. I can do the bottom completely separately, so I can do them step by step. I can take the 4 squared in the bottom, because that's what should come first. 16 minus 9. I keep reducing the tops and bottoms. So my next step is going to be negative 8 plus 22, which is 14. Bottom, 16 minus 9 is 7. So my answer is a 2. Again, pause so you can write down if you need to. Okay, so grouping symbol first. I see my absolute value. So I got to go all the way on the inside first before I evaluate the absolute value. 3 absolute value of, oh, I see an exponent, 16 plus 8 divided by 2. Every step should be accounted for. Make sure you're writing out every single step. Keep going inside the grouping symbol. 3 plus 16 to plus, or sorry, 3 absolute value 16 plus 4. Okay, so then I get 3 absolute value. Oops, that's a 2. 20. Now remember, it's positive. It doesn't turn negative. Remember, it's distance away from 0. Distance is never negative. So it's really just 3. Operation there is multiplication. 60. Why don't you guys try this one on your own? Pause it, and then play when ready. Okay, so this gives me, look, here's my grouping symbol. Don't want to worry, you can work on the exponent yet. Grouping symbol first. 4 minus 7 is negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. exponent next, because now I've evaluated the grouping symbol. 3 squared is 9. Divided by -3 is -3. Here's my answer. Okay. Let's take a look here at our last page. This last page is a lot about taking the words, putting it into the math. Okay, kind of like doing some translating. Okay, so let's translate. Let's take words into math. Different context clues that you have to know. Sum means to add. So the sum of, got two things. The quotient of 12 and -3. Quotient means to divide. So the sum of the quotient of 12 and -3, and so the sum of this and this, the square root of 25. Now, here's my second part. Right? So now I've created my math sentence. Now I have to do the order of operations. First things first, grouping symbols. And yes, the square root is a grouping symbol. So let's take that first. 12 divided by -3 plus 5. Now I go with the division. -4 plus 5. And now finish it off. +1. Okay. Would you pause and try this one on your own? And then we'll get back into it. Okay. Difference of means to subtract. Difference of y and the sum of 4 and y. The sum of 4 and y. Now, think about what I just wrote here. I have two things that I'm going to subtract. I want to subtract y and the sum of 4 and y. You know, this and this, right? It looks as though, the context looks as though I want to finish this first before I start doing anything else. So I think I want to put that in parentheses. Okay. This one, it's not, oh yeah, that's just variables. So I guess I should just leave that. I think I probably could. You know what? No, let's not leave that. I lied. Let's take this negative and do the distributive property with it. We'll talk a lot more about the distributive property, but let's bring in that negative using the distributive property. You should know that from middle school. Distribute that negative and it turns everything negative on the inside. -4. And then this positive y turns into a negative y. And then look what happens. What's positive y and negative y? Nothing. So it ends up just being -4. Those two terms cancel out. Answer is -4. All right, so again, make sure you're copying all notes, all problems, everything. Don't forget that the quiz is tomorrow. And it does not include anything on this video. It is just over section 1, 2, and 1, 3, which is just add, subtract, multiply, and divide positive and negative. Positive and negative. Okay, that's your quiz tomorrow. It is not anything to do with this order of operations. And again, it is a no calculator quiz. No calculator. Okay. Hope you all have a good Monday.